Ready to our history. At Port Arthur, Dean Allen train, 7 nightly news.
But first, a scene of horror and carnage in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur tonight, where as many as 25 people have been shot dead in Australia's worst massacre. At least 15 people are wounded, and the gunman who's still holding police.
In today's first case, we will delve into the most devastating massacre committed by a single civilian in Australia. Visitors to the picturesque resort town of Port Arthur were tragically unaware that they had found themselves in the most perilous of situations at the most inopportune time. We will explore the motives behind the perpetrator's heinous actions, delve into his past, and uncover the events that unfolded on that fateful day. Additionally, we will also turn our attention to our second case, which involves the enigmatic disappearance of Alexis Murphy. Captured in her last known moments by a camera, her story is shrouded in mystery and begs for closer examination. Brace yourselves. We're stepping into the crime scene now. We're going to Hobart, the capital and largest city of the Australian state of Tasmania. Martin Bryant was born in Hobart on May 7, 1967. His father, Maurice, his mother, Carleen, and his sister, Lindy, were part of his family. Despite Martin's modest upbringing, he seemed to attract trouble from a young age. As early as 18 months old, he was already breaking his toys and leaving them scattered around the house. When he started walking, he would often wander off and end up playing by himself in a field. Worried about his safety, his mother, Carleen, resorted to leaving him on the porch with a leash and toys, although this method received criticism for treating him like a dog. She argued that it was the only way to keep him safe. By the age of 3, it was evident that Martin's mental development was not progressing as expected. His parents took different approaches to his upbringing, with his mother allowing him to express himself while his father took a more hands-on approach. Upon entering primary school, Martin faced bullying from his peers due to his behavior, leading to isolation. At 6 years old, school psychologists contacted his parents, reporting incidents of cruelty to animals. His behavior continued to worsen over time as he displayed increased violence towards animals and bullied younger children. Efforts were made to provide him with support, and eventually he was transferred to a special education school. Despite various interventions, including spending more time with his father on fishing trips and hikes, Martin's behavior did not improve. At 14, his father's decision to buy him an air rifle only fueled his destructive tendencies. He engaged in reckless behavior, such as firing at passing cars and targeting birds in trees. After an incident where he shot all the parrots in a tree, the family sought help from a psychiatrist. The doctor diagnosed Martin with concentration problems, speech interruptions, and a tendency to excessively talk about his surroundings. The prognosis was that Martin would have difficulty holding down a job due to his disruptive behavior, and he was advised to apply for a disability pension. For the next 3 years, Martin lived relatively peacefully with his family. In 1987, he took up gardening for extra income in an attempt to lead a more normal life. It was during this period that he met Helen Harvey, a 54-year-old heiress who ran a lottery business. Helen hired Martin as a gardener, and he began working at her mansion. Despite some initially positive interactions, issues arose due to the property's poor condition, leading to police involvement and the hospitalization of Helen and her mother. Martin continued to care for animals on a farm purchased by Helen, but his erratic behavior with the air rifle resulted in multiple police warnings. Recognizing his son's mental health struggles, Maurice, Martin's father, took steps to plan for his future by establishing a foundation to safeguard his inheritance. Unfortunately, on October 20th, 1992, Martin and Helen were involved in a fatal car accident, resulting in Helen's death. Martin's serious injuries, and the loss of 2 dogs. While Martin denied causing the accident and attributed it to Helen being distracted by the dogs in the back seat, suspicions lingered. Helen, who had designated Martin as the sole beneficiary in her will, left her entire estate and lottery proceeds to him. After spending 7 months recovering in the hospital, Martin returned to his family home, where Maurice and Carlene took measures to protect his inheritance and ensure his future well-being. In August of 1993, Maurice announced he would be spending the weekend on the farm, bidding farewell to his family before leaving home. The next morning, a man arrived at the farm and found a note on the front door instructing him to call the police, prompting him to promptly alert the authorities. The police and fire services quickly responded and discovered Maurice's car parked in a shed alongside a suicide note. Despite extensive search efforts, Maurice could not be located and was declared missing. The focus then shifted to the reservoir at the property's rear, leading divers to investigate. Their suspicions were confirmed when they found Maurice submerged in the water, holding a box of depression pills with 18 tablets missing from it found in his pocket. Additionally, several deceased sheep were found in the reservoir, adding another layer of complexity to the mystery. Initially, suspicion fell on Martin due to his lack of emotional response upon finding his father's lifeless body and his unusual behavior upon returning home. However, it later emerged that Martin's developmental disorders hindered his understanding of death compared to others. Maurice's medical records revealed his past struggles with mental health, leading authorities to classify his death as suicide. Following his father's unexpected death, Martin inherited an additional $250,000, further fueling his odd behavior. Martin's attempts at forming friendships proved futile as he grappled with conversational engagement and behavioral regulation. Frustrated by people's reactions, Martin decided to explore new destinations. His travels took him to New Zealand, the USA, and various European countries in his pursuit of companionship. Eventually, disillusioned by his quest, Martin concluded that the world didn't cater to his needs, believing everyone was conspiring against him and planning revenge against them in the future. After obtaining his driver's license, Martin began accumulating weapons, purchasing semi-automatic rifles and a hunting rifle. On the morning of April 28, 1996, Martin started his day at 6 o'clock, packing his sports bag and heading for Port Arthur by car. Located on the island of Tasmania, south of Australia, Port Arthur began as a logging station in 1830 before being repurposed as a prison by the British government for notorious criminals, and later becoming a tourist attraction by 1877. Upon arriving at a seaside cottage he was familiar with by 11:45, Martin encountered the owners, David and Sally. Due to his father's past interest in purchasing the cottage, a vendetta formed in Martin's mind as he committed an act of vengeance. He entered the hostel, shot Sally, confronted David, and tragically killed him. After covering up the crime, Martin made his way to Port Arthur Harbor, bustling with over 500 visitors that day. Ignoring security instructions, he parked near the harbor cafe, conversed with cafe patrons, and then unleashed a violent attack with his rifle, causing injuries and fatalities to numerous individuals, including Mick, Kate, Jason, Sarah, and Carolyn. In the middle of the chaos, the security manager, Ian Kingston, witnessed the horrors, rushing towards the cafe and encountering a ghastly scene of carnage, with bodies and blood scattered on the ground. During that time, he witnessed Martin open fire on more than 60 people in the cafe. Ian did his best to protect the people and help them leave the cafe. Some individuals, unaware of the severity of the incident, gathered to see what was happening, and Ian tried to turn them away. After killing 12 people and injuring 10 in the cafe, Martin proceeded to the neighboring souvenir shop, where he began shooting everyone in sight. He fired armor-piercing bullets, at those attempting to hide and killed 2 cashiers in the store. Upon returning to the cafe to search for individuals who had managed to escape, Martin reloaded his rifle and retrieved more bullets from his bag. He then walked towards his car, firing at anything moving on the street. Upon reaching his car, he switched his rifle and approached the buses with his newly loaded weapon. Boarding a bus where people were hiding, he killed everyone who exited the bus, then shot a few more individuals before leaving the scene. While bystanders contacted emergency services to report the massacre, they were unaware that the nearest police station was an hour away. Anxiously, Martin observed a woman named Nanette Mikek and her 2 children aged 3 and 6. He aimed his rifle at Nanette and her children, ordering Nanette to kneel down while she pleaded with him not to harm her children. He fired twice at Nanette, the mother, and once at one of the children. The child managed to escape and hide behind a tree, but Martin pursued, shooting him in the neck and killing him. Upon approaching the toll booths, Martin noticed the operators and others who were unaware of the unfolding events. He exited his car and engaged in an altercation with a man approaching in a BMW, swiftly pointing his rifle at the man and shooting him in the chest as he attempted to flee. Martin then targeted 2 women in the BMW, shot at them, and pulled their bodies from the vehicle. As he departed Port Arthur, he discarded the shotgun and extra ammunition, halting at a gas station on the route in front of a Toyota Corolla. He instructed the driver, Glenn Piers, to immediately exit the vehicle, despite Glenn's pleas to spare his girlfriend. Martin forced Glenn into the trunk of the BMW, returned to the Toyota, and shot the woman in the vehicle 3 times, resulting in her death. Understanding the gravity of the situation, police reinforcements assembled around Port Arthur, alerting tactical response units. By the time a police officer reached the gas station, Martin had vacated the scene. The gas station attendant and concealed patrons informed the officer of Martin's direction. Martin eventually returned to the initial location, the seaside hostel, and fired at every passing vehicle. Upon arriving at the hostel, he removed Glenn from the trunk and secured him to a staircase railing with handcuffs. Meanwhile, a journalist contacted businesses in the vicinity to gather information about the incident. By chance, the journalist phoned the hostel where Martin was situated, connecting with the perpetrator, who identified himself as Jamie and admitted to the acts. By 3 o'clock, the police had finally arrived in Port Arthur. Martin's assault had lasted about 90 minutes, and the gunfire had subsided. Police officers secured the area, facilitating treatment for the injured individuals. Seriously wounded individuals were airlifted to the hospital, while others were transported by ambulance. Negotiator Terry McCarthy reached out to Martin to de-escalate the situation, to no avail as Martin refused to engage. When asked to surrender his weapon, Martin demanded a helicopter, claiming to possess sufficient funds for the request. Before his cordless phone battery died, Martin disclosed his entire fortune before losing connection. Unable to verify whether the hostages were harmed by Martin, negotiator Terry listened intently for signs of life, but found none. Throughout the night, authorities refrained from searching the premises, opting to assess the situation in daylight.
But first, a scene of horror and carnage in the Tasmanian town of Port Arthur tonight, where as many as 25 people have been shot dead in Australia's worst massacre. At least 15 people are wounded, and the gunman, who's still holding police at bay, is thought to be holding at least 1 person hostage. Most of the victims...
The following morning, smoke billowed from the hostel, indicating that a fire had been set. 10 minutes later, the front doors exploded, revealing Martin rolling in the grass, clad in burnt attire. Swift police intervention extinguished the flames and revealed the bodies of Glenn, David, and Sally, while Martin was transported to the hospital with severe burns. With the discovery of multiple bodies in the hostel, the staggering toll emerged. Martin had claimed 35 lives and left 23 injured. Martin faced a total of 72 charges, including 35 counts of murder, 21 counts of attempted murder, and several counts of grievous bodily harm. While acknowledging abducting Glenn Pierce at gunpoint and forcing him into a car trunk, Martin denied shooting him. During his trial, footage captured by a tourist depicted the attack, which Martin vehemently denied. Despite his denial, he exhibited signs of guilt, making no effort to prove his innocence. Public concern arose regarding Martin's sentencing due to his childhood history and a tested IQ of 66. However, these apprehensions dissipated when he received a sentence of over 1,000 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. Showing no emotion upon hearing his no parole sentence, Martin remained unapologetic for the murders he committed, frequently referring to himself as Australia's worst killer in interactions with prison staff. Before we dive into our next story, if you could take a moment to hit that like button, it would mean the world to us. A single click for you is a huge boost of encouragement for us. Alexis Tiara Murphy lived with her family in Shipman, Virginia, a small town with about 500 residents known for its peaceful atmosphere where everyone was acquainted with one another. Alexis, a vibrant and confident teenager, was involved in various sports and activities. She excelled in dancing, softball, and volleyball, earning a full college scholarship. Additionally, her active social media presence garnered her thousands of followers, with her mother mentioning her penchant for her phone, typical of a 17-year-old. On Saturday, August 3, 2013, began as an ordinary day for the family. Laura, her mother, had a work shift later that evening, so Alexis's grandmother was looking after the kids. Alexis, eager to enjoy her last days of freedom before school started, took her father's car to Lynchburg for a hair appointment and school shopping. However, after stopping at a gas station, she went missing her appointment and becoming unreachable for hours. Her disappearance was alarming, as Alexis was usually active online and inseparable from her phone. Concern heightened when her grandmother noticed the light on in Alexis's room late at night, leading to the discovery of her absence. Her father's car was also gone, and attempts to reach her were fruitless. Laura wasted no time reporting Alexis missing to the county sheriff's office after finishing her shift. Although authorities initially suspected Alexis might have left willingly based on social media activity, her family disagreed, emphasizing her contented life without a motive to run away. Despite extensive search efforts involving volunteers, law enforcement, and helicopters within a 5,000-hectare area, Alexis remained untraceable.
It's clear they're taking this disappearance very seriously, and tonight this tight-knit community is wondering what could have happened to one of their own.
Everybody knows everybody, so it's just a sense of family, and everybody is feeling this hurt and pain.
Around 6 p.m. Saturday evening, 17-year-old Alexis Murphy was last seen by her family leaving her home. They say she was headed to Lynchburg to go shopping.
The case took a new turn when the FBI became involved, scrutinizing Alexis's phone records, uncovering her planned meeting with a man named Michael in Lynchburg. The discovery of her abandoned white Nissan at an old drive-in movie theater parking lot was a pivotal point, broadening the search radius. Surveillance footage captured an unidentified person parking the car, yet their identity remained unknown. Further scrutiny at the gas station revealed Alexis appeared calm and regular that evening. The perplexing circumstances mirrored past disappearances along Route 29, including that of Morgan Dana Harrington. The collaboration between Alexis's family and Morgan Harrington's parents highlighted the urgency to locate Alexis and prevent future tragedies. On the surveillance footage, they noticed a man named Randy Taylor, who lived nearby, opening the door for Alexis. The staff mentioned they didn't overhear their conversation, but Alexis and Randy did exchange brief words outside. Was it just a casual chat, or was something more going on off camera? This prompted the police to start tracking Randy, following signals from Alexis's phone. The FBI drove along long country roads until they reached a location littered with abandoned buildings and discarded trash. a concerning spot for the phone signal. As they approached, a car hidden in the bushes caught their attention. Passing by, they discovered Randy Taylor's trailer, connecting the dots. Randy met the police at the door when they arrived at his home, where they explained the purpose of their visit. Initially denying knowledge of Alexis Murphy, Randy eventually allowed the police entry and consented to a house search after they showed him the surveillance footage. In a surprising turn of events, Randy confessed to meeting and talking with Alexis that day, stating she was with another man. Randy said that Alexis had shown interest in buying marijuana, a suggestion he passed on to a man he knew, describing him as a black male in his mid-20s who worked in cornfields and drove a burgundy car. The three of them gathered at Randy's trailer, sharing alcohol and weed before the other two left. Randy claimed he saw Alexis happily chatting with the man before they departed. However, the absence of a mention of a third person by gas station staff raised suspicions. When questioned about the man's identity, Randy said his name was Damien. During a search of Randy's residence, the police discovered an earring, artificial nails, and a long, dark strand of hair, which were sent for analysis. With a budget shortfall preventing further investigations, the only lead was the name Randy provided. By examining Alexis's social media, the police identified Damien, who worked at a neighboring McDonald's. Damien was eventually cleared after providing an alibi, a DNA sample, and denying any knowledge of Randy or involvement in drug dealing. With no other leads, attention turned back to Randy's trailer for clues. The FBI's involvement sped up the DNA analysis, with results expected in 2 days. Concerned that Randy might flee if found guilty, the police hastened their investigation by looking into his criminal history. Randy had a lengthy record, with a 1992 theft conviction leading to a 20-year sentence, of which he was released after 6 years. Gas station employees recounted Randy's frequent presence, often sitting alone in his car for extended periods, smoking and observing passers-by, leaving an eerie impression. As the 8th day of searches approached, Alexis's loved ones gathered at her home for a vigil. Investigators revealed that they had found unidentified DNA in Randy's car that did not match his own DNA. As a result, authorities intensified searches around the caravan, employing specially trained dogs equipped with glue sticks to capture scents. These dogs were able to locate Alexis's shattered phone in the bushes just yards away from Randy's caravan. Concurrently, tests were carried out on a hair strand, an earring, and a nail, definitively confirming that these pieces of evidence belonged to Alexis Murphy. As investigators updated the public on the caravan's condition and Randy's behavior, her family started losing hope and preparing themselves for a tragic outcome. Shortly thereafter, the teams took prompt action. 11 days after her disappearance, Randy was arrested on charges of kidnapping Alexis.
Hey, I know I got a gag order, but I'm trying to talk to you. I want to come to the jail.
In January, then Commonwealth's attorney Anthony.
He chose to remain silent and requested a lawyer. The lead investigator in the case stated that Alexis was no longer alive and accused Randy of her death, emphasizing the importance of locating her body. He repeatedly pressed Randy for information on the body's whereabouts. Growing increasingly agitated, Randy slammed the table forcefully, prompting the guards to intervene. It became evident that there was enough evidence to charge Randy with murder, yet further evidence was required for a conviction. In January, Randy faced escalated charges and stood trial for first-degree murder and kidnapping.
Were you surprised how much evidence was found in the camper days later?
Yeah.
And why do you think all that evidence was still there?
The fact that they were there, I think, goes back to the fact that he's a sexual sadist. I mean, people like that like to keep a souvenir of some sort, and I really don't think he had any intentions of getting rid of any of that.
On Wednesday, August 14th.
Detectives suspected that Randy had lured Alexis under the guise of drugs for sexual purposes, and when she refused, he assaulted and killed her. Alexis's family refuted the drug theory, expressing their belief that their daughter would not engage in drug use. They also struggled to entertain the idea that Randy could have orchestrated such a scheme. Randy's defense suggested the involvement of a third party, even hinting at potential police involvement and the planting of Alexis's hair and blood in the caravan. Despite the absence of a body, Randy Taylor was convicted of kidnapping and first-degree murder. While awaiting sentencing, Randy confessed to another crime in jail and granted an interview.
No, I did not kill Alexis Murphy or hurt Alexis Murphy.
Do you know where she is?
No, sir, I do not.
And do you know what happened to her?
No, sir, I do not. There's just too many things that haven't been told for me to be convicted of murder of Alexis Murphy. You can ask anybody that knows me, anybody in this jail, or anybody around here. I'm not an outspoken person. I'm not a violent person. I haven't been.
His lawyers tried to negotiate with the judge by offering to reveal Alexis Murphy's location in exchange for a 20-year prison sentence. The Murphy family declined this offer, emphasizing that Alexis's life was more valuable than a 20-year sentence. Randy Taylor was found guilty of the murder of Alexis Murphy and received 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. While her family found some comfort in this verdict, they continued seeking answers and pursued justice. Alexis's mother told the press that her life had been shattered, with her sole objective being to locate her daughter and bring her home. Pressure mounted on the investigating detectives to scrutinize another individual tied to the initial mention of the Morgan Harrington case, Jesse Matthew, who had been convicted of the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington. Speculation arose that Randy might have been wrongfully imprisoned. Morgan disappeared in 2009, Alexis in 2013, and Hannah in 2014. However, investigators clarified that Randy only mentioned Jesse's name after it was publicized in the media. Initially, Randy confidently pointed to Damien and questioned why Alexis would be with Damien if Jesse was indeed responsible. Jesse did not match Randy's description. His appearance, hair, and vehicle were dissimilar. Despite reservations about Jesse's involvement, the Murphys agreed to a DNA test. Jesse Matthews' DNA did not match the DNA found in Alexis's car, and his DNA was not detected in Randy's trailer, completely exonerating him. Meanwhile, Alexis's family attended her graduation ceremony and gathered with their loved ones.
Happy, hilarious, wise beyond her years, and she had so much more.
7 years after Alexis's disappearance and 6 years after Randy's conviction, the long-awaited truth finally emerged.
The search for a missing Nelson County teenager has come to a close after more than 7 years. Investigators found the remains of 17-year-old Alexis Murphy. 10 News reporter Jessica Jewell is following the...
Surprisingly, Randy directed the authorities to search a private property in Livingston, suggesting they investigate there. His lawyers made it clear that there were no negotiations with Randy, since negotiations don't happen with murderers, and their sentences would not be reduced. Laura, Alexis's mother, expressed that while this wasn't the news she had hoped for, it brought the closure needed. The cause of Alexis's death was determined to be asphyxiation, with signs of trauma and injury suggesting a violent struggle before her passing. Randy's story was far from over, as the murder of Alexis was not the only incident he was involved in. In 2010, 19-year-old Samantha Clark went missing, and Randy was one of the suspects. On the night Samantha disappeared, Randy admitted to being at the same bar as her and part of her friend's circle. According to Samantha's mother and the police, Randy was the last person definitively seen with Samantha. He even made multiple calls to Samantha's home that day and resided in the same trailer park. After finding Alexis's remains, Orange County investigators announced that Samantha's case transitioned from a missing person case to a kidnapping and murder case involving Randy Taylor. They mentioned that the investigation into Randy was ongoing, leaving room for potential charges to be pressed, while Samantha's case remained active. Before we conclude this video, please be aware that the video on the left may be disturbing. It is recommended for adult viewing only. On the right, you'll find a playlist of videos that have been highly appreciated by our viewers.